Uh, it is great to see everyone here. I really appreciate you jumping on with this, invitation that came out last week. Um, I just want to, for a minute, talk about the importance of this as well as introduce our trainers. So, just to get started, first of all, I'm Cindy Luna, Dean of Fine Performing Communication Arts, because I see we have some friends from other divisions in here. So, welcome to FPCA's training. We're glad you're here. And then all of our FPCA team, thank you so much for being here. As you know, we did receive a recommendation in our accreditation report for regular and substantive interaction in online sections. And these are asynchronous online sections. So that is the reason that we are just trying to pay as much attention to this as possible prior to their follow-up visit. Y'all know I did accreditation for a long time in my previous life before I became your dean. And it's not just a matter of meeting the standards because we want to be an accredited school, because yes, we absolutely do, but those standards are best practices. So really learning how to engage in effective RSI will improve your course environments. And I think you all, those of you who are doing it or those of you who are unsure what it means, ultimately will be happy as you engage in additional RSI in your online environments because it creates more engagement on the student side of things. So it's just best practices all around. Plus, we do want to be an accredited school. Sue Yang and Sally Potter are here to train you today. They're your faculty colleagues who have taken on this charge of trying to get us all up to speed on RSI. So I appreciate them taking the time and being with us today for a little while to give you all some tips and tricks, as well as walk you through what our accreditors are going to be looking at when they engage in our spring classes. So thanks again for being here, and welcome Sally and Sue.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Just a little bit of business. So part-time faculty are paid for attending this training. Go back. Yeah. Sorry. So what you really need to make sure that you do is in the participation pane, make sure that your first and last name appears, because that's what we use to keep track of who's attending RSI trainings, and also for the pay for part-time faculty. Just go ahead and you hover over your name, click the three dots, and then rename yourself. If your name is not, it says like iPhone or just your first name or something like that. That way we know who's here. We will stop periodically for questions, but there are two of us that are presenting. So what you can do is if you do have a question, go ahead and just type it in the chat. And while Sue's talking, I can answer, and then vice versa. And then we do plan to spend a good amount of time at the end with your questions, because we know that you do have questions. Okay. Okay. This is what we're going to do today. Just really quickly on the agenda, we're going to talk about why RSI is important for accreditation. Just really quickly, Cindy did a good job of explaining that, but really quickly go over that. There are some information on what we're calling the RSI policy cheat sheet, and we'll talk about that. Kind of has some tips and some best practices. And then we're going to go through the DE assessment tool that the course reviewers actually use, and show you what all the different criteria are on that, and what counts for RSI. And then our plan is to have a good deal of time for questions at the end. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
Okay, thanks, Sally. So these slides have a mind of their own. They keep wanting to move forward. Welcome, everybody. Firstly, RSI is regular, substantive, and substantive interaction. And these RSI was an update to federal regulations and policies, which now requires distance education courses to have regular substantive interaction. So again, as Sally mentioned, she'll go over FCC's RSI policy in more details and also provide some examples. So I'm not going to go into that now, but I do want to give you two reasons why RSI is important. And the first is really student success and student learning. What we've seen over and over again is that instructor presence in an online course really plays a key role in student success. And this is just as important as in our face-to-face classes as well too. You know, when we're actively present and engaged, it just creates a supportive learning environment and a sense of community amongst everyone in the classroom. And when we encourage students by providing positive and constructive personalized feedback, it helps the students to understand what they're doing right, but also gives them an opportunity to improve on their learning. And this is what is really going to help the students build that confidence in learning. And especially in online courses, being an active participant in your course just lets students know that they're not going through the course material alone, that there's actually a real person on the other side that they can contact and that is there for to support them as they go through the course. We can include some of these links in the chat, but also we'll make our slides available if anyone is interested in taking a deeper look into any of the research here. This slide didn't come out quite as intended either. So I just wanted to mention that ACCJC is the accrediting commission for community and junior colleges, and it's our accrediting body. ACCJC, when they come in and they we go through accreditation, they're seeing if we meet the standards of quality as a college and that we're actually teaching what we say we're teaching and that we have resources to do so. Also, it allows being accredited allows for our students to transfer to other institutions and colleges at Fresno State. And then so those institutions are more likely to accept the credits because we are an accredited institution as well. And lastly, with accreditation, it allows us to be eligible for federal financial aid and for our students to be able to receive that financial aid to pay for their education. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong here too, Dr. Luna, but we go through accreditation, I believe, every 7 years. And so what happens is ACJC will assign a peer review team to review our institutional self-evaluation report and materials that we've submitted on what we're doing and what we've accomplished. And so there are 4 standards that the peer review team looks at, and that the second standard is specifically on student success. Within the second standard, there are 9 different criteria, and I'm not going to go over all of this. We'll link the documents for you to review in the chat as well too. But the specific one that I want to point out is standard 2.6. And that one states that the institution uses delivery modes and teaching methodologies that meet student and curricular needs and promote student learning and achievement for all students. And so how is this criteria reviewed? So the peer evaluation team is looking to see that we are regularly evaluating the effectiveness of our delivery modes and our teaching methodologies to support student learning and achievement. They're also looking to see that we have practices in place that ensure ongoing alignment with federal requirements for distance education. That's defined by ACCJC's policy on distance education. And so where could we provide this type of evidence? We're looking at possibly like looking at program review, in our improvements to how we deliver um, or address student learning and achievement, whether it's online or in face-to-face, hybrid and whatnot modalities. We're looking at institutional reports on the needs of our students and developing plans to improve or to meet these gaps and to improve learning, and also establishing local guidelines around effectiveness and quality in our DE courses. And so I bring that up, specifically this one, because I knew it was going to do that. Because in the report that we got from our peer review, we received a core inquiry on our DE courses. When they initially came to evaluate our DE courses, we did not pass. We need 85% to pass the DE portion of the accreditation. And so we did not pass. Now we have in summer of 2025, we received a letter from our peer team that said that they'll give us 18 months to work on this, and they're going to come back and they're going to evaluate our DE courses. And so again, going back to that standard 2.6, specifically on distance education, what they wrote in that letter was that in order for us to be in compliance and to meet the standard, they're requiring that we ensure that regular and substantive interaction takes place in our DE courses. Which leads me to sort of like the timeline and just where we were, where we are, and what's coming next. So again, back in July 2024, that was when we first submitted our self-evaluation to ACCJC. Our peer evaluation team reviewed all the materials that were submitted. They returned a core inquiry report to us, identifying areas that we did very well in, and then also areas that they needed additional information. Now, in February of this past year, the peer team came to visit FCC. They did a site visit. And so they met with various departments and groups across campus to learn more about our campus environment, and then also to ask additional questions. As I mentioned in summer, that was when we received the accreditation reaffirmation letter to be in compliance, what we would need to do to be in compliance for standard 2.6. And since then, since February, we knew this was already coming. And so we've been pushing and providing training and workshop sessions all around RSI and our online courses. Making sure that faculty understand what RSI is and how to ensure that RSI is evident in their courses. In spring 2026, that semester is going to be very important for us, as that semester is going to be the semester that the peer evaluation team is going to review our distance education courses again. They're going to come back in fall 2026 to review our spring 2026 courses. So again, we just want to stress the importance of this, why we're doing this, why you keep hearing about RSI and everything like that. We just want to make sure that everybody is aware, everybody understands, and that as we move to spring 2026, those of us that are teaching online courses, that we ensure that there is RSI in our courses. I'll turn it over to Sally now, but I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, I'm going to show you the actual rubric that ACCJC is going to use. It's a document, and it has a number of different criteria, and I'll just quickly go through all of them and then give you some examples of how they can be met. One thing that I want to emphasize is that RSI should be done in all classes that have any amount of distance education. So that includes our hybrid classes. However, ACCJC is only going to look at 100% online classes. They could be synchronous, asynchronous, some combination of those. We do have a few synchronous courses at the college, but anything that's 100% online that they could potentially look at. It's a random sample. They'll take a random sample, and institutional research will pull that, and then they will be looking at your courses. They'll have teacher view. They get to see everything that the teacher can see, and they look at them again. They're looking at spring 2026, but they're looking at them in fall of 2026. So after the courses are all finished, they're all archived, everything is just kind of like set and no changes can be made, and only the course itself. So things that are outside of that course, for example, your Canvas inbox, when you're messaging students, they cannot see any of that. All they can see is what is actually in the course. Okay, so the first criterion of the rubric is providing direct instruction. This is really only applies to synchronous courses. There could be a case, some reviewers might say that if you're doing like a 1 hour a week study session where, you meet with students synchronously, even though your course really is an asynchronous course and you're recording that, then that could count as direct instruction. But for the most part, it is just if it's an asynchronous course, you're not going to be able to meet this criterion. Okay, the next one is assessing or providing feedback on a student's coursework. And so that is usually what is going to be happening in the speed grader, where you are giving students scores, where you are providing feedback, extensive feedback. The type of feedback that you want to provide is going to be what's called substantive, or focused on the content of the course. So feedback that you want to focus on is the things that you would find in your COR, in your course outline of record, all of those objectives, all of the lecture content, any of that stuff. If you're giving feedback in the speed grader and you're just saying like, great job, good job, or I can't open your file, you need to turn it into a PDF and resubmit it, that does not count, because those aren't your objectives or your outcomes on your COR. Okay, next one is providing information or responding to questions about the content of a course or competency. So this can be given in a number of ways. Probably the easiest way is by making course announcements, again, that are focused on that content. So a course announcement that just talks about, like due date reminders, or some event that's going on in the college that doesn't have anything to do with your course, those kind of announcements would not count. Announcements that count are things like going over the module, the week's work, reviewing work or assignments that were submitted, and really focusing on the content of the course. Okay, and then the last way that RSI can be met is by facilitating a group discussion. And again, regarding the content of a course or competency. So what this means, facilitating a discussion means that the instructor is in the discussion responding to students, not every single student, but that your presence is can be seen by students that are going into that discussion. So what I tell instructors is, please don't respond to every single student, but you want to kind of pepper your comments here and there, maybe like every third, fourth, fifth student. And you really want to make sure that you are, again, are giving them information that is substantive. Okay. So, giving them maybe some more information, clarifying, even asking them some questions, critical thinking questions, giving them a link to an article that they might be interested in that has to do with the topic of the discussion. Okay, and then a couple more things that have to do with how RSI is done. So predictable and regular basis. Okay, so this is where the reviewers are looking through your course to see that you're doing these practices on a regular basis. Maybe it could be weekly, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be weekly, as long as it is, like every couple weeks and throughout the course, so that when they look at the beginning of the course, at the end of the course, it seems like you're doing these things throughout. And then the last one is monitoring the students' academic engagement and success. So again, this can be done in a number of ways. Probably if you're giving announcements, if you are getting feedback in the speed grader, that is all, even if you're doing your online office hours, that is all monitoring their success, engaging with them, and being there for them. Okay. Let me show you this is called the assessment tool for peer review that ACCJC uses. And it is a dynamic rubric. And so every line, as I've done reviewing before, and every line will be a different course. They'll just all be listed here. And so the name of the course is here. If it's synchronous or asynchronous, that'll be indicated here. And then these boxes are what the reviewers mark. Okay, so again, if it's an asynchronous course, I'm probably not going to be able to check off direct instruction. Probably the first thing that I'm going to look at is I'm going to look in the syllabus and see if you have a virtual office hour. If you have a virtual office hour that you do every week, then this is going to be, I can check off regular and predictable engagement. Okay, so I'll just make a mark there. Then I'm going to start looking at the announcements. Announcements are really easy to see in a course. I can just look at all of them on one page. And so if I do see many different announcements, and they are about course content, and they're all through, beginning, middle, and end of the course, then I am going to be able to check off provides information there. Okay. So once I do that, then I'm going to look at discussions, and I will probably go to a few different discussions, maybe, towards the beginning of the class, middle of the class, maybe towards the end of the class. And the easy way to do that, and you can check your own discussions yourself. At the top of the discussion, there is a search bar. And so I will, make note of the instructor's name, and then I will type maybe their last name and hit enter. And then what I'm going to see is every time that they made a post. So if they just posted once or maybe twice, only two are going to come up, but I can just kind of scroll down. I don't even have to look at what the students posted. But if I see many posts by the instructor, then I am going to be able to put that in facilitates group discussions. And again, I'm not just going to check one, I'm going to check a few. If I come across, like when I'm looking, if I come across one or two where I don't see that, that's okay. I'm just going to keep looking. And I want to make sure that I see a few in that case. And then once I do that, Then I'm going to start looking in the speed grader. The speed grader is the last place I'm going to look because it's the most time consuming. You know, just think about like what your grade book looks like and all the clicks that I would have to do to get into the speed grader for each person. So if I do look at a few assignments, again, from the beginning of the course, middle of the course, end of the course, and I see that there are substantive comments, substantive feedback that's given to many students. Again, if I'm looking at an assignment, it doesn't have to be every single student, but it should be most of the students, especially if I don't give them 100% points, right? So if I see that in a few of those assignments, then I can mark off assessment and feedback. And then I can come over here and I can say, okay, well, this instructor, they are engaging with students because they're giving them feedback in the speed grader. They are giving lots of announcements and they're facilitating group discussions. So yes, I can mark that off. Or if I see that, you know, if I see they're getting lots of feedback and they have an office hour, then I can say, yeah, they're monitoring the success and they're engaging students. So then once I have those marked off, then it changes from does not meet to meet, okay? I can have, so let's say I don't have this one there. That is still going to be a course that meets the criteria. However, if it's not done on a regular basis, if I take that one off, then that will change it to doesn't meet the criteria. So yeah, and then I will just go through each course, probably spending, you know, depending on how much I have to look, I'm not going to be spending more than like 10, 15 minutes on each course. So I'm going to try to check these off as quick as possible. And typically 2 reviewers will review each course and they just want to make sure that they're in agreement. So that it's just, you know, not only one person. Okay. I think that's all that I wanted to show you. Does anybody, I see that there's some stuff in the chat here. Let me see.
Sally,
Yeah.
Sally, did you want to also touch upon as reviewers, they're not trying to use this as a oh they're not following compliance or anything like that, but really they're trying to, you know, make sure that we do pass, you know.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing here. Yeah, that is a really good point. So, you know, the attitude of ACCJC is they really want colleges to pass, and they really come in with the mindset of we're going to do everything that we can and look at every bit of evidence that we can to make sure. And this goes for the entire ICER, entire accreditation. They really want to try to make you pass. Also, this is completely anonymous. So the reviewing team, so if your course does get chosen, you will never know, and the college will never know. This really is supposed to be random. It's supposed to be a representative of, you know, of our courses, and it's not intended to pick certain faculty to, you know, kind of say like, oh, well, the math faculty, they're not doing a good job, but, you know, like the communications faculty are doing a great job. This is not what it's about at all. It really is completely anonymous, and they really do want to give kudos. They really try to give kudos as much as they can. And to, when they do find an area that's lacking, try to give every opportunity to ask for more evidence. For us, our courses were reviewed, and they started with, I believe it was 35 courses, about 35 courses. It's supposed to be between 5 and 10% of our total number of distance education courses. So at first they did not see enough courses that met the RSI criteria. It was only about 25% of the courses that they reviewed met it. So then they asked for more. The second time they looked at about 52, 53 courses, different courses. And again, they did not see enough of those courses that met this criteria. So yeah. Think, let's see. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to raise my hand and I can't find my raise hand feature. I guess I've been off of Zoom too long. Sally, you shared some examples with the deans of what kind of comments would not constitute RSI and what kind of feedback would. And when I put on my aging instructor hat, it's been a few years now, there were some things in there that I thought, oh gosh, I would have thought this was solid feedback. And those examples were really helpful, like saying, hey, Sally, your paper's you're really developing your writing. Good job. Not enough. So would you mind sharing those examples?
Yeah, I'm gonna put something in the chat. Let me just take a second here and find it. This is let's see here. This is a document that that I typed up that has quite a few examples.
I think it'd be
like
great
bring
if
that up.
maybe we could talk through an example.
Yeah. Let me move this over here. Not over there. And then, let's see. Yeah. So this list of examples, I just started kind of like as people were asking questions, right? I started to write down the different examples. Um, so let's start with the one on the bottom. These things that are not considered regular and substantive. So when you have an assignment that you give a score to, and there is no feedback. So even if you're using a rubric, if you are just clicking the boxes of the rubric without really writing anything, then that would not be considered RSI. Also, feedback that is really generic, that is really, like that you could give to almost any student. So, like, if you just say, great job, or, try harder next time, or, I don't know, something that's really, really vague. One thing that, some of you may know is that Canvas has what's called the comment library, where you can store comments, and those are convenient, but for me, I find them not really that helpful, because once I start putting comments in there, and then you can just, the idea is that you can store comments, and then you can kind of copy and paste those comments for students when they apply. They follow you around from course to course, from assignment to assignment. And so if you think about, a comment would have to be really specific. It could only apply to this one assignment, to a few students in the class, and it's really not that useful. So, just be careful when you're using that comment library. If you're using that, it probably isn't going to be, count for RSI. Feedback that's focused on the format, where that's identical for every student. And, and I give the example here, like great work. If a student really, if you have a couple of students in your class, and probably we all do, that just do outstanding work, and you really don't have anything to, say to them, to, critique them, then it's fine to put, great job, I really, loved your work, or whatever. But if you're giving that to most of your students or all of your students, then that is where it's not gonna count. This is important too. So feedback that's given so long after the assignment is submitted that it's not useful for students. So, we're not expected to, especially larger assignments, to grade and give feedback, within like a day or two or a couple days. But if it's, if you're regularly giving feedback weeks after the assignment is due, and it's really not going to be useful for the students as they are creating their next assignment for you, if that makes sense. Another thing that is a little confusing for a lot of people is those pre-recorded video lectures. So, or even like articles or things that you write. This is kind of a good rule to think about. If what you're posting in your course was something that you could have made and that you did make before the semester started, before students were ever in your course. So those pre-recorded videos, links that you're linking out to any videos, articles, textbook chapters, any kind of content, websites, any kind of content like that. Those kind of things are probably not RSI. If it's something that you could only do with students while the students are actually in the course, so maybe you make a video for them and the video is about the work that they did during the last module, for example. And so you are responding to that and you're talking about that and giving them, information on how they can improve for next time or critiquing what they did on that. And it's clear that you're responding to that, then that is definitely RSI. That would be a good, a really good example of RSI. And then another one is meeting students on Zoom and saying that, your policy is that you meet them by appointment. So if they have to reach out to you to make an appointment, then that's not considered RSI because it's not instructor initiated. However, if you have a virtual office hour, which many, probably most of our full-time faculty do one virtual office hour a week, that definitely counts as RSI. Even if no students show up, it doesn't matter. You are initiating the opportunity for them to engage, and so that counts as RSI. Okay, let me see what's in the chat here.
Yeah, Sally, if you scroll up,
Yeah.
there was a question about the office hours. Let me see here.
Oh, Robert's question?
Yes, Robert. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so there are many, so there are different ways to meet that criteria. Remember what the criteria is. It's engaging with students and on a regular basis. So that could be, so instead of doing a virtual office hour, and I know, I think for part-time faculty, you're paid for 12. I think probably depends on how many units you have, right? So if you have, 10 or 12 office hours, and I know that the district requires you to come in person, which of course makes no sense if all of your students are online students. But if you're going to that office hour, 10 or 12 times, and you have your dates listed there in your syllabus, if you could just open your Zoom, during that time, that would count, even though it's not exactly every week. It's done on a regular basis and it's scheduled. Yeah, so hopefully that answers it, but that's not the only way that you can meet it. It is kind of an easy way though, because if you are, if you can say, oh, even if you're not getting paid, you say, well, every Monday from, like 3 to 4, I'm just gonna sit here at my computer and do work and open a Zoom for students, then you can get one, checked out of the way. It's kind of a low, I don't know, little effort. If it, I know it does require scheduling, but it is kind of an easier way to make it. Stickies for general responses. That person touch it. Yeah, Julie, that's good. So what the reviewers want to see is when they're looking at your comments, they just don't want to see every single one is exactly the same.
Something I share when I'm looking in classes, Sally, um, I've served as an ACCJC reviewer too, and we sometimes will see a gorgeous class with beautiful content, lectures, announcements, all of it. And it's all stuff that's been populated in advance of interaction with students. So that doesn't constitute RSI. It's how the engagement comes into that beautiful course. You create this great learning environment, and now it's how you show up in there. So students are feeling your presence. They are you're kind of in a way trying to mimic what you would do in a face-to-face environment with respect to interaction and learning and growth, right? Where that magic happens.
Yeah,
And
this is a good point. So what they're not looking at your course design. They're not, you know, you could have, but yeah, the most beautiful course, the best navigation. It's so easy, it's so great. But that is not what they're looking at. So even if your course is a mess, it's you know, it's hard, it's not accessible, it's hard to then it like for that's not good. That's not good. But for the purposes of this review, that's not what they're looking at. They're for this course review, they're only looking at your interaction. So yeah, so it's a little interesting, I guess. Yeah, so no, Eric, that's a good question. So probably what they would, you know, they'll look at your syllabus, and it's a good idea to explain in your syllabus your communication policy, how you're going to be communicating with students, and especially what assignments you're going to be giving students feedback on. That's good for the students, but it's also kind of like a map for the course reviewer, so they'll know where to look. So you know, if you could say, I'm going to give you extensive feedback on these particular assignments, then that makes it so much easier for the course reviewers. They'll know where to go. But even if you don't, they're probably going to want to have you be giving feedback on, you know, maybe extensive feedback on maybe one assignment per week or one every other week. And again, as long as it's regular throughout the course. So what they wouldn't want is, you know, all auto-graded quizzes, and maybe like small, like journal type assignments where it's just either they do it or they don't do it. And then maybe you just have like one midterm and one final, that's it. And those are the only things that you're giving feedback on. It would have to be more regular than that, if that makes sense. So if you have, yeah, okay, good, okay, yeah. And then any other questions? Again, I'm gonna stop sharing. And see each other a little bit better. And if you have a question, yeah. Yes, simple syllabus, yeah. And if you're using simple syllabus, you will notice that there is a section now that's added called communication policy. We just added that in, I think in August, end of July, August. So it has some information about what kinds of things should be in that in your communication policy. So that's a good thing to do. And I always tell faculty in my department, if you don't like simple syllabus, you don't necessarily have to use it, but go to simple syllabus, and then you can like copy and paste some of the elements that are right there for you and give you some ideas about what kinds of things you should have, because I know some people don't like it. The way it prints is not great. Just kind of looks a little clunky for some people, but you can make a better looking syllabus that using it as kind of a guide.
Sally, also going back to Brooke's question. I don't know if you saw that one.
Um, oh yes, I was reading it and then it's long here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
where they don't use class discussions.
Yeah, so you don't have to use discussions, right? That is only one of the criteria. So if you remember, if you have a virtual office hour, that counts as your one of your instances. And then if you are doing announcements, a lot of announcements, substantive announcements, and you're doing them, very regularly, like every week, then that's it. That's what you need. If you are giving feedback regularly, then you're doing more than you're padded. You're doing more than you need to do. So you don't, yeah, you don't have to do discussions. And I know some people, I do discussions in my course almost every week. Some students love the discussions, but probably most don't love them, or at least have a neutral feeling about them. So, yeah.
Sally, can I ask a question about
Yeah.
announcements?
Yeah.
So some folks have announcements kind of ready to go where they're taking the module overview and they put it into an announcement to say, this is what we're going to do this week. You're going to do these things. This is what you're going to learn. If you wanted it to meet RSI, my guidance has always been maybe give some kind of summary of what you saw happen in the course the week before and how, maybe there could be some growth in the upcoming module. Like, I noticed y'all were doing this and it was really terrific. This week, I want you to think about maybe this. Would that be accurate? That just putting out the module overview, even though that's really helpful to students, that's not necessarily RSI in an announcement?
Yeah, it depends. So if you are, talking about each assignment, you're going through each assignment and you're kind of, giving like some extra information, think about what you would do in a face-to-face class when you are, explaining, okay, this is the work that we're going to do this week. You're probably not just going to say, look at page 30 and do those questions and then that's it. See you later. Bye. Right? You're probably going to give, them a little bit of background. Remember, we did this before, now we're doing this. A couple people had questions about this thing, so I'm going to talk about it now. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to come back to this same concept. And so just, that's the kind of like the dynamic teaching that we would just automatically do in our face-to-face classes when you're surrounded by those live humans, and some of the thinking about some of the questions that they would have. So if you kind of think about it like that, doing videos for those is a great idea. Students typically like that. But I would also say that, you don't necessarily have to do videos if you're not comfortable with that. Like, a bulleted list is great. Or even just like a little paragraph, is good. Let's see. Yeah, so, having, pre-recorded video lectures isn't necessarily RSI. It could be more, considered more interactive and engaging with students and monitoring students. If you have for example, a Canvas Studio video, and then they're watching it, and then you embed questions into the video, that would count as, engaging students and monitoring students. And again, doing that on a regular basis is what you want to do. It's responsive to something that's happening. Yes, responsive, and also think about the course content. So think about all those things that are on your COR, all the lecture content, all the objectives, even your SLOs. That is like the meat of the class. Like, if it is focused on that, and it's, again, similar to how you would be talking to students in a live class environment. Yes. Yes. No. Pre-recorded videos, not bad. Pre-recorded videos, especially if you're teaching piano, I don't know how you would teach that class if you don't have pre-recorded videos. So yeah, so we're not telling you to don't do pre-recorded videos. We're not telling you you're most courses are going to have that. Most courses are going to have auto-graded quizzes. You're going to have that. You're going to have assignments. I have a lot of assignments in my linguistics classes that are, almost kind of like little like summaries or reactions. And for the most part, I just give I just check the criteria or the rubric, and pretty much they do them or they don't do them. And then that leads up to a more summative assessment. But yeah, those are, and then I don't give feedback on those. But I do give feedback on the larger assessments in the course, and I try to do that once per week. I don't do it every single week, but 14, 15 weeks out of 18 is probably how much feedback they're getting. So yeah. Anything else? Other things? Other questions? What are you all doing in your courses? Or anything surprising, shocking, making you
One thing that I did in my announcements is if I graded an assignment the previous week, that I would go over, oh, well, this is a star. I love the way this student did this, or I love the way they explained this. So I kind of was recapping some of the assignments I had graded, and then I also would point out in the announcement, well, I noticed that there's a common error here that you guys are making, and I kind of included that in my weekly announcement, as well as like what the students were going to do that next week.
yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. Yeah, and then Susanna, yes, they can see everything in the speaker. They have the teacher view, so they can see it. And they're probably not going to watch your videos. I wouldn't think that they would watch your videos. They just probably don't really. They just don't have time for that. But if you're posting videos, yeah, that's gonna get you. Yeah. Yeah, Tim, that's great. Yeah, so Starfish, remember Starfish is just a different platform. They would not be able to see what's happening in Starfish. They're not going to be able to see your inbox messages. Unfortunately, inbox messaging students is a great way to contact them, but they're not going to be able to see that. If I don't know if anyone here is using like the third party platforms or third party like a Pearson type of a product, or Discord. Some faculty use Discord to do discussions just because they don't really like Canvas discussions, and they find that Discord is easier to use. That is not necessarily bad, but what I would ask you is if you are doing those kind of things, make an announcement in your course telling students that you sent out notices in Starfish this week, or you send an inbox message to some students, so be on the lookout for that. If you are using something like a Discord for a weekly discussion, what I would ask you to do is to summarize what happened in that discussion, and then make an announcement and post that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so, documenting is really, really important. So just, kind of thinking about, especially for spring, how those course reviewers are going to see what you're doing in your course. Let's see. Yes, yeah, getting a lot of good feedback about the RSI tips. We're going to do something similar, not exactly the same thing, but something similar to remind everybody in the spring. So just to keep it in everybody's mind. I'm sorry, Sue, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, Ellen, they are with the teacher role, they will be able to look at the feedback and speed grader that you give. So like the assignment comments that you do leave for your students, they will be able to see that.
Oh, I think up above, someone mentioned, how to get, this is the big question, right? Is how to get students to actually look at those comments that you're writing. You're spending all your time writing, giving them feedback and giving them comments on their assignments. What I have found to be very helpful is at the beginning of the semester, when I give my first, extensive feedback on an assignment, I make a little tutorial video showing them how to view those comments. You can also just, post the Canvas guide that shows them how to do that if you don't want to do like a complete walkthrough of that. But that has made a big improvement, and I've really noticed that more students are looking at those comments. And and a lot of times they'll even write back to me because they can make a comment back. So we're having like a little dialogue. That has improved that a lot. Okay. Um, yeah, they wouldn't necessarily be able to see anything that's in the calendar, but maybe you have, Susanna, maybe you have an announcement or something in your syllabus that explains that, and then they would know that you're doing that, right? So I know maybe this is what you do in your course for when I teach comp for the research paper. A couple times a semester, I'll have students conference with me. And so that's something that, I'm putting several announcements in there to remind them. Another thing that I do with my students to try to increase their engagement is I show them how to change their notification preferences, because the default for students is they get a lot of emails every time something's graded, every time there's a change in something, something gets uploaded, and for all of their classes, and it can be a little overwhelming. So I just tell them, make sure they have announcements turned on, make sure they have inbox messages turned on, and comments. And then those are the only notifications that they should be getting, if they listen to my advice. I don't know that they necessarily do.
We're getting close to time, but I do want to say that I email Sally about once a day with a random question and Sue, and they get back to me within minutes, usually with great advice and direction. So this can be an ongoing conversation. They've been wonderful about supporting us as we go into this territory. So it doesn't have to stop here. I'm happy to talk with anybody about their courses. I love discussing this with all of you. I've had fun sitting on Zoom and going through your classes with you. So ask and share and talk to each other about best practices within your areas, because you can come up with the greatest ideas together. Like Brooke talked about teaching music theory. Talk to Brandon, right? You two are going to have so much fun geeking out on music theory. So, there are just a wealth of information among all of you too when you share with each other. So Sally, Sue, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate you spending the time with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And right before we go, I just want to say for Stacy, I don't know if that's Stacy Mamura, but put your last name. If you can change your name for your last name. And I think everybody else has their first and last name. And it doesn't matter if you're from a different division. This is all going to go into one big list. And yeah, so we can keep track of who's here.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Dean Luma.
Thank you both. And thank you everyone for coming today. I appreciate it. I know you're all swamped right now with all that
Great
grade.
turnout. Really good turnout. Good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.